So first, we're going to talk about college admission requirements. So the college admission process has a lot of different components to it. So it's very important for us to be able to kind of break that down and digest that in a more feasible means. So the first idea, well, here's the overview what we're going to cover. So we're going to first talk about like the general college admission holistic process, go into some application platforms, some factors that are considered, factors specific to the college app, and like what's next, what we can see in the future. So holistic admission process, what exactly does that mean? With growing number of applicants that we have, colleges are leaning towards a more holistic admission process in which they look at you as a student not only from an academic side, but in terms of extracurriculars, in terms of how you express yourself and your personality through essays. Admissions are seen to learn more about you through equal consideration of your ECs, essays, and interviews, along with your test scores and GPA. Many of you right now are in the SAT program, so you guys can cover a lot of what like the test scores have to offer. And we'll go over a little bit about that later on, but there's a lot to the holistic admission process in terms of extracurriculars and other components. And we see like just from this infographic that college admission rates are decreasing immensely. So we have schools, especially like Ivy Leagues, for instance, they have admission rates of nearly 4 to 6%, which is significantly lower than before. So being able to successfully present yourself within the college admission process is really, really important. And that's what we're here for, to kind of break that down and see how you can make it unique to yours. So next slide, we're going to talk about some separate portals that exist within the college admission application. So the biggest one is the Common App. The Common App is the main application portal used to apply for undergraduate and transfer applications. So you guys as seniors in high school, you'll probably use the Common App to apply to the majority of your schools. If you're a rising senior, this is extremely prevalent right now, but the application opens in August. So that's when you can access it and put in all your like information, extracurriculars, all your essays, and that's when you can really start engaging with that. And the maximum amount of schools that you can apply on this portal is 20 colleges, but there are other portals that exist in which you can apply to more. The Common App on their website have guided videos to kind of walk you through that process. And I highly recommend you guys use that because it could be a lot. As you can see, there's like 7. Yes, there are 7. There are 7 tabs on the side that like have a list of information you have to input, and it could be complicated. So watch the videos and kind of walk through the process. It genuinely really helps. I used it during my process as well. All right, so what are some other application portals? So first we have the SUNY application, which is State University of New York. So these are schools like Binghamton University, Stony Brook University. They use this platform, but they are also accessible on the Common App platform. So what we recommend is, let's say you have already a list of 20 colleges on, I think someone is unmuted, so if you can mute, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So going back, to SUNY, SUNY is also accessible on the Common App, but let's say you are applying to more than 20 colleges and there are other schools that you want to apply to on the Common App, you can totally apply to those on the Common App and then list your SUNYs under the SUNY application. You just have to like re-input some of your information. Now the CUNY application, you can, which is the SUNY Universities of New York, so you have City College, Bard College, Hunter College. These are all accessible on the CUNY application and only through the CUNY application. So you can't apply to these schools on the Common App. And it's the same idea, you have to re-input your information. And then the Coalition for College is very similar to the Common App in the sense that you can apply to numerous amount of schools, privates and publics, but there are a less number of schools on the Coalition app than the Common App. So what's usually it's used for is, let's say you have your 20 spots filled for the Common App, and then you have 5 other schools that you can use the Coalition app to apply for. Just make sure what schools are feasible to apply for under the Coalition app. All right, so what are the actual components to these applications? So first is your actual high school experience. So all of you guys are in school right now. Well, no, it's the summer, so you should enjoy your summertime. But during the school year, you have your coursework and your grades. And there are 3 really important aspects to that. So one is displaying your interest. Are you taking courses that show the field that you're interested in, or are you just in general challenging your course load? So you can see this in 2 ways. One example is if you enjoy CS, and your school offers AP CS or CS electives, you're taking the initiative to take on those courses and doing relatively well within them. Embracing a challenging course load can engage in AP classes, honors classes, IB if that is offered at your school. If it's not, you don't have to worry about it. Being able to take a multidisciplinary load of these courses and being able to do well within them is really important for colleges to see, just so they can see that you can handle the rigorous coursework. And generally just aim for a high GPA, i.e. like 4.0 unweighted, but of course talk with your school depending on what their weighting system is. Some schools have a different scale according to whatever courses that they offer. And a giant misconception that can often be seen is, oh, colleges mainly focus on their junior year. That is not true. They look at all 4 years of high school. So your entire transcript lists all 4 years, and there you can see all your grades, how you've improved, what courses you've taken, everything like that. So keep that in mind. Now, the next component is extracurriculars. So there are numerous activities that can be considered as extracurriculars. Of course, we have after school clubs. So there are already probably a lot of organizations that exist within your schools that you can join, possibly even lead if you're super passionate about them and take on a position. You can also charter your own clubs. That's the thing that students do, especially if there's a field of interest that they have that doesn't exist within their school. Sports teams, whether that be in school or outside of school, research and competitions being like science fairs or any like creative writing competition that is present, you can totally add that in. Community service and volunteering, internships, work experience, and passion projects. And passion projects are very unique to you. So it's you taking on the initiative to start a specific brand, a specific nonprofit, or anything that you're super passionate about. I think someone is unmuted, so if you can mute, that would be great. I don't want to disturb like the rest of the branches that are there. So how exactly do we frame these extracurriculars? Because you can have a bunch or you can have a little, but what's important is one, you show your interest to them, right? Taking on like 12 different extracurriculars doesn't really do much. For a college application, they'll be like, oh, wow, you can do a lot, but how is it specific to you? Your interest, and that's the most important thing you want to portray in the college application process. So display, like, if you really into science, take on some like maybe courses that are offered outside that relate to STEM, or any like internships or research opportunities that exist. And these are simply like a search away on Google that you can try to engage in. To take on leadership positions and make impacts. This isn't necessary, but it's a great thing for colleges to see in order to understand that you are a leader, you're a natural born leader that tries to take on positions and tries to take initiative and make impact. And what's the best way that you can show this to colleges is being specific when describing your activities, because you can spend hours doing a lot of these activities. You can spend hours conducting community service or conducting an experiment in the lab, for instance. But if you can't properly describe them within your description for your activities on the Common App or any application portal, the colleges won't be able to understand. So this can be, instead of just simply stating, oh, I was part of the robotics club, you can be like, I took on machine learning opportunities by guiding like a 19 plus freshman within my club, right? That's a lot more specific. We understand what specific things you are really good at and skilled at, and who are you helping, learning your impacts. So that's really, really important, and we can kind of help you craft how you can use that message. So what are application components outside of just school? We're going to do a case study so we can better understand this idea. So we have a student here. Zainab is a rising senior and is contemplating on her final college list. She plans on majoring in business or economics in hopes of either starting her own successful business in the future. She has a strong GPA and high SAT score and dreams of attending UPenn, which is an Ivy League. However, she's well aware that UPenn is a regional school and needs other alternative colleges. How would she go about creating her college list? Hint, hint, what should be looking for each college? So I'm actually going to ask each branch to kind of partake in their own ideas. So can we start with the Jamaica branch? Is there anyone there that has any idea of how she should go about creating her college list? Any ideas at all?
They're okay for now. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have anyone from the Long Island branch that has any ideas of what she can look at for creating her college list?
Go ahead, Alexandra.
Like she should, so she has like a high GPA and a high SAT score. I feel like targets and reaches might be better for her. So like obviously UPenn, but other colleges that aren't necessarily Ivy Leagues but still have strong business programs in them.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. That's perfectly hits home on the point in which you're going to have a wide range of schools that you can apply to besides just Ivy Leagues. There are targets, reaches, and safeties. So just to clarify, safeties are schools that you are probably with your statistics and with your background, you're more likely to get into. So for her, it'd probably be like any of the CUNYs or SUNYs she can apply to. And then targets are definitely still competitive schools, but it generally this what is it? The applicant demographic matches her demographic of like strong GPA, SAT background, stuff like that. And then reaches are, sure, you may have students that are like her that have been accepted, but it's a very low acceptance rate, so you can't say for sure. And the best way to create such a list is through a balanced college list. So even though this one only has 5, in general, to remain competitive right now, we recommend 13 to 21 schools, especially because how little the acceptance rates have grown to be, even at a lot of safeties, such as Stony Brook. We recommend applying to a little more colleges, even if it takes a little bit more effort to write supplementals, just so you have like more options to choose from. So here, since she's very interested in business, we have Vanderbilt and UPenn as reaches, University of Florida and University of Texas Austin as matches, and then or targets, both can be used. And then DePaul University as safeties. Now, some of the things that she looks at is, of course, acceptance rate, of course, SAT and GPA, but taking note of what are things at these schools that she's interested in. And Alexandra brought up the point of having schools that have good business interests because it aligns with her interests. So under that section, she mentions Vanderbilt's Undergraduate Consulting Club, Vanderbilt's Women in Business, Business Book Club, like highlighting some of these things that she thinks she can take part in and make use of the resources that are offered at these schools. And this is really great. And I recommend all students, especially right now, if you're a rising senior, maybe even starting during your junior year, if you're going to be a junior, to think of what are some of these schools that have these opportunities that you would take advantage of. And you can later use them within your essays that you have to write for the school by pinpointing some of the things you would partake in. Now, standardized exams. So of course, we have the SAT, the ACT, and the AP exams. So the SAT, many of you are in the SAT program right now, so you guys are well aware of what it's like. It's a long test, but it is slower paced than the ACT, which is on a scale of 1 to 36. And it's a lot more fast paced and includes science section and geometry. You can do either test. You don't have to do both. What we recommend is choose the test that you think you can do a lot better in. And by taking both type of tests, you can see what type of score range you go into and then really hone in on increasing that score for that specific test. And we highly recommend this because especially now in which days are test optional, having a competitive score can help you within college admissions. Now, AP exams, they're a little bit different from these standardized exams, but AP exams can apply to like different subjects. So we have AP Calc BC, AP History, like different types, like world history, European history. And you can get college credit, but that depends on which schools you go to. So if you go to SUNYs, often they'll like accept the majority of your credit, but sometimes elite institutions won't do it. It really depends school to school. In order to remain competitive, we highly recommend aiming for 4s and 5s, because that shows you, one, understand the course really well, you took advantage of all the top opportunities, and you understood just the general summary. All right, so to help understand how test taking falls into this mix, we're gonna do another case study. So Zainab, the same student, is an extremely driven student, but we're talking about Zainab before she attained a high SAT score. Is an extremely driven student, but has struggled with taking the SAT exam. During their first attempt, they received a 1320. On their second and third attempt, they received a 1420. And although the 1420 is sufficient for their safety school, it falls within the lower percentile of accepted student stats for her target and reach schools. Her counselor suggested being test optional, but she's unsure whether or not that will decrease her chances of getting admitted. What should Zainab do? So this time, I'm gonna ask the Jackson Heights branch to kind of participate and give us some ideas of what Zainab could do within this situation.
Here, please raise your hand and we can start speaking up.
You guys seen this? Go ahead, go ahead. You can just speak into the camera and just participate, and then we'll just ask for one more answer because I have a big group here. Thank you.
I think she shouldn't like submit her test score because I feel that her test score is a little lower. So I think she should focus on her regular scores, maybe.
Great. And I think there was someone else that wanted to participate.
I would agree and say she shouldn't submit her SAT score because if she did submit the 1420, it would actually decrease her chances rather than just going in test optional. So if she submits her SAT score, that shows that she's like a bad test taker, and that would hurt her rather than help her.
Perfect. You guys both hit the point of what situation test optional can be used in. So many schools are still test optional and plan to be for the next 2 years.
Hey, Civica, I'm so
yes.
sorry. We want to reward participation. So for anyone who's volunteered to provide answers to help your college application presentation, we do want to gift them one free round of the essay review. So to all of our participants today, you just earned yourself one round of college essay review. So we really appreciate your participation. Keep it up.
Thank you, Ivan. And yes, participate, guys. Sadia is really good at essay review though, so highly recommend. She has amazing ideas. But going back to the point of how we should utilize test optional. So our goal is to attain competitive scores. So of course, attaining for like 1500 plus, especially for elite institutions. Of course, you don't want to take the test too many times because colleges can see if you've taken the SAT 5 times, for instance, because that really shows, okay, at this point, you're dragging it on just to take on a higher score and you're really doing it for college applications. You want to see a lot more genuine. So you want to have a reasonable amount of times you take the test and attain a competitive score. Now, if that doesn't happen, there are the option of test optional, which in this case, Zainab would probably go for her elite institution. So she can submit the 1420 for her safeties and probably still get accepted, but you have the option of opting out and applying test optional for elite institutions. Even with that said, even with test optional existing, we still recommend trying as much as possible to have those competitive scores so you stand out. A huge reasons why we have these test scores is to know that you are able to handle some of the coursework and rigorous exams you will be taking. Because in college, often some midterms can last up to 3 hours, and having the stability and stamina to complete those tests are really important. And it stands as you as a higher part of the applicant portal if you have that competitive score. But yeah, that's how test optional works. Now, the next thing is the personal statement. So the personal statement is one essay that you submit to all colleges. And it's required for all colleges. There are other essays, but they're optional, and we're going to talk about them later. And you can choose one of 8 prompts on the common application, and one of the prompts are just write about anything that you want. So there's a lot of flexibility. And this essay is really, really important for admission officers to know more about you. Who are you as a person beyond just, okay, here are all the accomplishments I have, or here are all the like grades that I have, here's my extracurriculars. Like, we want to know more about you. So I'm actually going to ask Sadia if she wants to share some general tips about the personal statement.
Thanks, Sabiha. As she was saying, this is like one of the most important parts of your application to colleges. And there are a lot of tips, so we're going to get into that in our future webinars. But first thing, you shouldn't like regurgitate your resume. Don't list all of your activities. Don't sound robotic, because this is a chance for the admissions committee to hear your voice. So simple language is actually better. Don't use very convoluted words. Don't use a thesaurus to replace, your simpler ideas, because, you want to channel the authentic you. And one of the most important things to do in your personal statement is to show some kind of growth or impact. Pick a story arc. And it can be hard to pick, what you want to talk about. You might have a lot of different meaningful moments in your lives that have shaped who you are today, right now, which is why we recommend starting early. So this is the time, if you're applying, for example, the cycle, you should spend July doing a lot of brainstorming. Look through all of the prompts on the Common App. They can actually help you think about ideas, minus like, write about whatever you want. If you like, know what you want to write about, that's probably where you'll go. But if you have no idea, we recommend starting with the other 7. And I would say maybe take like 5 minutes for each free writing, brainstorming. Give yourself that time limit, because sometimes if you have a lot of time, you like tend to steer towards perfectionism and trying to like, pick the best topic. But giving yourself that time limit and just like writing down whatever comes to mind is only going to help you, because you're at the very beginning of your process. And then you can pick an idea and write one draft, multiple drafts with different ideas, and go through that process. But we'll get more into this later on.
Thank you, Sadia. And the next part is supplemental essays. I'm going to ask Sadia to also add on to this, but general idea of supplemental essays are, these are optional essays or mandatory essays depending on schools. So a lot of elite institutions will have supplemental essays just so they can know more about you as an applicant. Once again, it's that same idea. And some common prompts are why us essays, which is, okay, so why do you want to go to our school? Besides that, like, they already know that they're a great institution. For example, if you apply to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, any of these Ivy Leagues, they already know they're great institutions. But why do you want to go to this college specifically for your interests and your goals? And a common one is, tell us more about an extracurricular that you have. So you elaborate, you design a class or major. So that's a lot more of a unique topic that they have. They often have some of those quirky ideas on there. Tell us about your academic interests. So this pertains to, why do you want to major in the specific thing you want to major in? So if you're applying as a comp sci major, why do you want to do comp sci? And it's great to reference specifically to the school as well. And then diversity in community. So this really engages in, what impact have you made to the community, or has the community shaped you? It can be put into either direction. But these are all individual for each essay, but some essays are repeated for each school. So it's definitely great to take on some time, even if it's like, it looks like it's only 200 words, but it's really important how you phrase yourself within these little essays. And Sadia wants to add into any other tips in general.
Yeah, just like, I guess piggybacking off of what you just said, you do have like a shorter word limit, which makes it harder actually to make that impact and kind of stand out to the admissions committee. And also, general tip for whoever is not applying this cycle, if you're like in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, take classes and take AP classes or higher level classes in subjects that you are interested in, because that kind of will help your argument about like the why major essay. For example, I want to study computer science because, I really, really enjoyed this, and you can see it in my transcript that I've taken a lot of different computer science related courses, or in your extracurriculars, try to have like kind of a narrative within your overall like package. And then for the tell us more about an extracurricular, any of these, being specific is really important. Try to use anecdotes if you can, but that also depends on the word limit that you have. And then if you think you don't have anything like very uncommon or unique to write, that's okay. If you think a topic is very cliche, this is one of the examples we're going to use for our next webinar. But for example, if you want to write about football because that has like made a strong impact on you, you can take like some uncommon values that you gained from that experience. So don't talk about like, teamwork, which is kind of basic. Maybe how has like football shaped your critical thinking, and then apply that to another scenario, like your English class. So you can take like cliche topics and make it unique to yourself, so that they remember you. But yeah.
Thank you, Sadia. And yeah, we definitely have, if you want any essay writing tips or ideas about like the brainstorming process, you can totally reach out to us and we can help you with our curriculum. So before we finish off for this section, some required elements are the letters of recommendation. So you have to reach out to 2 teachers and or advisors who can write about you well, right? sometimes you might feel hesitant. Oh, what if like I didn't have a great grade in their class, but I'm really close to the teacher and they understand me as a student. That's fine because they can speak to you as a person. And once again, this is one of those elements where they want to see you beyond just your test scores, beyond just your grades, but you as a student and as a person. So if they can speak about your character, that is amazing. And if you're, let's say, one of the shyer people and you're not very like, you have a hard time like engaging with teachers, that's okay. But you can reach out to them and talk to teachers that can maybe talk about your strong suits as a student specifically rather than your characters. So if you're really into math and they see how you go about solving math problems and your specific like thinking process, they can speak on that. So you have the like flexibility, kind of pick and choose who you think will speak best about you. And then sending materials. So this includes transcripts, test scores, letters of recommendations from your counselors because they have to send in a letter of recommendation. Keep in contact with your school about it, even though a lot of platforms such as Naviance are used for this. Keep in contact to make sure their schools are receiving this, because if they don't, they can't review your application. So that, before we end off, actually, we have another case study just to put into perspective. Anwar is a friend of Zainab, and he just finished up his sophomore year. Inspired by Zainab, he also plans on aiming to attend an institution, especially Columbia, because of its great computer science program. He's been interested in CS since the start of high school, and he even took AP CS a year earlier than the rest of his grade. He has even taken the time to work on his own CS projects at home. However, he currently doesn't have any clubs or extracurriculars that he's part of at school or outside of school. What should he do now? I'm actually going to go back to the Jamaica branch because they haven't participated yet. So do you have any ideas of what Anwar can do, especially considering he just finished up his sophomore year? Anyone from the Jamaica branch?
We think that maybe he should just commit to CS and show that he's really into CS, and maybe join some clubs that has to do with computer science to show how much he really likes it.
Is there anyone else that has any ideas? This can be from any branch. If Jackson Heights, Long Island, any other branches?
I think that he should take his interest to advantage and maybe create a computer science club in his own school so he can encourage others.
Right, that's great. You guys both hit on the point in which still have the time within the next year to start a lot of these projects if you want. You can start off like small. If you're not sure about how to go about starting your own initiative or club, you can join an existing club. But it's really important that you can still find ways to express your interest, even if you think it's too late. So make sure to be active within that, especially when you realize that you're not exactly doing that. The good thing is within your career, in his like coursework, you can see he's always had this interest within CS, but also we can take advantage of these CS projects that he's doing at home. Because the thing is, even though he's doing that at home, he's not talking to an audience about it. So what's great is showcasing and utilizing a platform such as the beautiful internet or through social media, in which you can showcase a lot of the projects you have, create a page for it, create like maybe a network or like a publication on a lot of these like free publication sites about some of the projects you've been doing. And that shows that you are serving not only yourself with your interest, but also a community and sharing the knowledge and ideas that you have. So the idea is it's never too late. You might think, oh, there's no point at this like right now, but you never know. And I think it's a great way for you to constantly get engaged. So that is it for the admission requirement section. That was a lot, I know. And then Sadia is going to deep dive into how we frame exactly all of these requirements into a beautiful timeline. So before we go into that section, I'm going to accept like a few questions right now, and then we'll also have time at the end for questions.
So we're going to have to be really careful because we're going to have to do a combo hybrid presentation for the Q&A. We have in-person leaders at Jackson Heights, and we have presentation leaders joining us remotely. So questions and answers, please submit your questions to your branch leader, and then we'll type the questions in. Is that okay? So everyone can see what the questions are. So whatever questions you have, please gather them, write them on your phone and walk over to your branch leader who's behind the computer and they can type that into the chat. Does that work for you, Ms. Sabiha and Ms. Sadia? And along with that, we do have Google reviews that we're handing out. The next portion is going to be the college timeline after the Q&A. Timeline will tell you in July, we have to do this. In August, get your letter of recommendation. In September, plan out your essays. We will have another workshop like this in 2 weeks for parents and students in the personal statements. So please take the time to fill out the Google review. This is for our newest location in Manhattan, and we'd really, really appreciate your time. So, you know, we'll do both right now. The Google reviews as you submit your questions. Thanks, team. And we'll go around, give us 2 minutes, and we'll have hopefully populated with questions.
Okay, so we got our first question in. And Sally and I, we can just bounce off of each other, like add in. So first, do all colleges have to see your transcripts? Yes. So your transcripts are submitted through a portal in which all of the colleges that you've applied to on both of your portals have to be accessed to, and your transcripts contain all 4 years, or if you've taken any like high school courses outside of it, it'll also be listed on there. So during 8th grade, if you're taking algebra or living environments, it'll also be listed on there. But yeah, that's like a mandatory component. Should students start a passion project entering your junior year, and would it help improve any chances? I don't know if I can speak to will it help improve any chances, but in general, I don't think it's ever late to start a passion project. Especially if you're just entering your junior year, you have a whole like year and a half to craft it. And maybe even get people from school involved. So it's not only just like an individual initiative, but also more community driven. So you have the help to make the platform even bigger. So if you have a passion project, if you're thinking about it, my biggest advice is go for it. Even if you're a rising senior right now, if you have a project that you've been planning on or thinking of doing, but haven't done it, do it. Because not only I think it's a rewarding experience that you can speak to, well, not only on the college application app, but just generally, like if you have interviews with your mission, with alumni for colleges, you can speak about your projects. And I think it's a great way to show that you're passionate and considerate. And even in your essays, if you want to talk about extracurricular, you can talk about your passion projects. And there's so many ways that you can incorporate that idea of showing your interest through a passion project through multiple aspects of your application. So yeah, I don't think it's ever too late. Sadia, you can totally add on.
Yeah, I think you hit all the points, but just wanted to add that, you know, it can also help you later on after you get into college, because oftentimes you're trying to, you know, apply for different positions when you get to college, or join like participate in different programs or join different clubs. And you know, if you have done a passion project and then whatever you're interested in college kind of relates to it, you can talk about it. If you have interviews for those, you can talk about it to help build connections, network. All of that is going to become very important when you go on to college. So it's never too late. Do what you love to do, and if you build that experience, it's only going to help you.
So the next question is, what if your GPA isn't the best and you want to go to a selective institution, but you're sure all your other aspects of the Common App will be great? What should you do then? I think you can still apply, but what you have to make sure is you still have a balanced college list. So you can't just aim for these selective institutions because often the margin of getting accepted is so small that like it's great that you have other aspects of your application that are great, but there's no guarantee, which is why you should definitely have a more balanced list of looking at matches and safeties, because while you're researching these colleges, you can find another school that you also really, really like. So my advice is yes, you can go for it, but make sure to have a balanced list just to make sure you have your options. And in terms of like for the selective institutions itself, like how you present yourself, I think like where you're, as long as within your coursework you have some interest and there are ways that you show that, okay, I can keep hold of like whatever the coursework is, or I can keep hold of my interest because I'm passionate, make sure to deliver that properly within your application, whether that be through your extracurriculars and your essays. But Sadia, if you want to speak to it more.
I think you hit all the points.
Okay, do you want the next question?
What happens if your overall weighted is 4.0, but you failed a language like Italian for a semester in sophomore year? I'm not sure about the recent, I guess, like questions that are common in the Common App, and whether they like, you know, provide space for you to provide some kind of explanation for anything you might want to. But if there is, I think that's where you can maybe talk about why this particular course was challenging for you if you're going through a tough time in your life. But importantly, don't let it discourage you, because as long as they see the growth, and also this happened in sophomore year, so that means, you know, because you have a weighted 4.0, that probably means that you did really, really well your junior and senior year. So if you have like that upward trajectory, don't be afraid. You can still apply to all of your dream schools and reach target safeties, but you might be asked about it, or you might have an option to explain it. So yeah, take advantage of that.
The next question is, what happens if you got 3s for 3 exams? Wouldn't it look bad if you decide to show them, since they will show up on your transcript anyways? Well, correction, AP scores don't show up on your transcript. So on your transcript, you'll have like your coursework scores. AP scores, you have to send them and report it through the College Board. So if you want, you can select to not send those 3 scores and report it on your application. But personally, what I would say is, if let's say their tests or like tests in a subject area that's not your strongest anyways, I think that's okay, as long as you make it clear to the colleges that like that's not your strong point. I think it depends on what colleges you're applying to. If you still have a rigorous course load even without those 3 APs that you have, and like if you have like a good grade, for instance, in those 3 AP classes, I think maybe you could balance it out. But I think it really depends on a case-by-case basis. So my recommendation is look at your subject area, look at like the average test scores for the school that you're applying to, and then maybe consider, are there other areas where you're showing that you're really good academically, or just like in general within those 3 fields? So that can be like your GPA or your like grade that you got for that class. But yeah, definitely look at those 2 things. Do you want to address on how would you start a nonprofit, Sadia?
That's a very specific question. I don't have any experience starting a nonprofit, but I would assume that, you know, because you're a high school student, networking in that case be very important. Having a team, if you're very passionate about something, I'm sure like, you know, you'd be researching it, kind of working within that like field beforehand. So that means like you might have mentors who can help you kind of go in the right direction if you think there's like a gap in the field you're working in, where a nonprofit would be really, really helpful. you can start identifying those goals by immersing yourself in that field first, whatever you want to do. And then you can, I guess, start or put together a team and start setting those timelines for yourself. Yeah, and start the nonprofit.
I think that's such an excellent question because as first generation immigrants, I think we've grown up with a feeling of giving back, charity, zakat, or just impact to improve the lives of others after us. And I think a not-for-profit NPO is one way to do that. But if you're in high school, the colleges aren't expecting you to do all that grown-up paperwork. One alternative is to find your favorite not-for-profit and do everything you can to volunteer, maybe get a summer internship. And if that not-for-profit allows some sort of school-based liaison or branch of that, that may be easier than the paperwork required for something so legally complex. I think we have some amazing questions coming up. What we'll do is start part 2 right away. And as you see the application timeline, and as you see more questions, you can continuously serve the questions to the center leaders, and they'll be showing up in the chat, and we'll have a good collection of questions as soon as we are done with round 2. The second part will be the college application timeline. Even though a lot of us have heard that the college application timeline starts September of senior year, that is wrong. We don't advise that. We are here in July before senior year. Some of you are here July before junior year. Some of you might be going to the 10th grade. So this college application timeline presentation will give you an idea of exactly when to start, how to start all the stuff they described in episode 1. They're going to give you a timeline for it. There will be a recording of this video made available for all of you afterwards. So we do request no photos of the presentation. That will be available on YouTube. Most important thing you can do as students is capture the information. I know there's recording, but you're not going to get it live from the folks who've gotten to these awesome schools. So just as a teaser, do you want to let us know some of the other colleges you got into before we get into the college application timeline? So, because folks are at the edge of their seats, they want to know the answer to that question. Thank you all. Go for it.
Do you want to start, Sabia?
Okay. So other schools besides Harvard, I got accepted to Yale University and Macaulay Honors at Hunter. But yeah, those are like my 2 standout schools, I would say.
I didn't apply to that many out-of-state institutions. Harvard was the only Ivy I got into. I got into NYU, and yeah, and then like my safeties, like the CUNYs and the SUNYs. Yeah. Okay. Should I start? Okay. Before I get started, I just want to ask everyone, how many of you are applying this cycle? How many of you are going to be seniors? I'm gonna raise your hand. I can kind of see, not really, but I'll try my best to see. Is anyone applying this year? Oh, I see a hand. Okay. Do we have any rising juniors? Okay. Are there younger students, 10th graders, 9th graders, middle schoolers? Okay. All right. So this timeline kind of takes us through like junior spring up until like senior spring. But before that, I want to just give tips to those who are younger. So what can you do? For example, if you're a 9th grader, I would recommend, starting to get to know your guidance counselor. If you build that like relationship over the 4 years or 3.5, however long it takes for them to write that letter, they're gonna know more about you, so they can write a stronger letter and have it be more unique than, like for them filling out a template, because some schools are really, really big, and I don't know, some guidance counselors might be doing that for students that they might not know as personally. And then I guess this is the time, 9th grade, early 10th grade, to kind of like explore all of your options for extracurricular activities. Join whatever club you think is really interesting. And then you can start narrowing down kind of what like you really enjoy doing. By end of 10th grade or just beginning of 10th grade, you'll know. And then drop the ones that are not interesting, because they're just gonna take up your time. And like Sabiha was saying, you don't really need to have like a million activities. You need to have the ones that like really speak to you, that you can talk about in your interviews or essays, and kind of show that long-term commitment and show like your increasing involvement and leadership in those extracurricular positions. So 10th grade, for example, if you know what clubs you want to commit to, 11th and 12th grade, you can kind of work your way up like the leadership positions. At the same time, it's never too late to join an activity or start a short-term project or a long-term project, whatever it is. So this is not to say like, it's too late. You're gonna be like a senior. You can't do anything anymore. You have to do what you're doing. And then also, I would recommend, like, if you're 9th or 10th grader, even like 11th, you haven't taken your SAT, try to read a lot more so that you can kind of increase your reading speed. That's only going to help you. It's never going to hurt you. Yeah, read like whatever you're interested in, but just read a lot if you can find the time. And then maybe try to get to know some of your teachers. If you have a smaller school, for example, you might be taking more than one class with the same teacher. So in that way, like they can build a stronger relationship with you. Yeah, so those are just some tips for the younger students, but we'll get started with timeline. Oh, we have a question.
Are the slides supposed to be moving?
No. Sorry, this is just without any on the slide. The slides are for students who are going to be applying. Yeah. So this is the timeline. We start from the junior spring, when you kind of, register for and take the SATs. And then we move all the way to May of your spring, senior spring, when you commit to your school. And hopefully, like, you're really, really excited to go to whatever school you're going to. Okay. So junior spring, what should you do? If you're a junior, or if you're a rising junior, and if you're not, if you're a senior, like maybe you should catch up on these things. Register for the SAT, or plan out the dates that you might be taking the SAT. People tend to take it more than once. So, if you take it earlier, you're gonna have some time in the middle to kind of improve scores if you need to take the second one. Because, if you take them like a month away from each other, and you don't make that significant improvement, it's only gonna take a toll on your mental health. And also that like not showing that growth might not be that helpful to you in the long term. So make a list of potential dates for your first SAT. Maybe make a study schedule. If you're going to enroll in a program, enroll in that program to prepare for the SAT. If you're self-studying, you can do that. Whatever you want, just make a plan and then try to stick to it. And then also around this time, try to keep up with your coursework, and then maintain good relationships with potential recommenders. So this is when, like, if you didn't know like who you'd want to ask for a letter of recommendation, try to pinpoint who you think might write a really good letter. Pro tip from both me and Sabiha, try to get a letter from your English teachers, AP English teachers. This is really funny, but I was in a conversation with a few of my other friends, and we're talking about like interviews and everything like before college, kind of reflecting after college. And most of us, like, 4 out of 5 of us had a letter written by their English teacher. It was a really big coincidence. But yeah, English teachers can really write well, so try to get to know them. And if you don't have a good relationship with like the teacher or a great relationship with the teachers that you might want to get a letter from, it's not too late. So try to be a little bit more active in their class, reach out to them, try to meet them maybe after class. And if you're struggling with participating, if you're struggling in like a part of their class, ask them for advice on how to improve. And that kind of shows like your dedication to that subject or your potential for growth and your persistence. And these are qualities that your teacher will be able to write about. So they'll have those specific examples to talk about you if you end up writing a letter, if you end up requesting a letter from them. Okay. And then May, June, this is when, oh, this is the pro tip slide. I was ahead of myself. So this is when you should ask for the letters of recommendation. Usually schools ask for 2, one science and one humanities, but definitely double check with each program that you're applying to. Some of them might require a lot more. I didn't apply to Sophie Davis, for example, but I heard that they need 5 letters. That's a lot. So keep in mind how many you're going to need. And if you are a senior and you still haven't asked for a letter of recommendation, it's not too late. You can still ask your teachers, just contact them and see, like, write a really nice email, talk about why you enjoy their course, you know, and then ask for that letter. Okay, so before we move on, we have a case study. Here we have Anwar. He's a junior in high school. He just finished his SAT. He really likes his AP English course and wants to ask for a letter of recommendation from his teacher at the end of the year. Although he's a really good student, he rarely participates in class discussions unless he is called on. He has also never spoken with his teacher outside of the classroom. Because of this, he's unsure whether his teacher would agree to write him a strong letter of recommendation. What do you think he can do? I kind of touched on this in the last slide, but does anyone have any ideas? We can go to the Floral Park branch first. I think they haven't participated in the last few rounds. Do you have any ideas?
So we have Alexandria again. You can go ahead.
I feel like, well, I don't know. I feel like just he's obviously good student in class, but there's a recommendation. Like obviously, this one wants to know about your personality and like your personality and like who you are as like student, I guess. So personally, I would ask for another recommendation just because I feel like the teacher didn't know me that well. But I don't know if that's like.
I couldn't hear you that well, but did you say that you wouldn't ask a teacher that doesn't know you that well?
Yeah, towards the end, that's what she was saying.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else want to participate? Any of the other branches? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, that's a really good point. So, you know, just because English teachers write really good letters of recommendation doesn't mean you have to get a letter from them. Get it from a teacher who really knows you that like really well. But if you're at this point and you know you don't think you have a really strong relationship with any of your teachers, it's not too late. So going back to what I was saying earlier, try to schedule an appointment with them for your own personal improvement, and you know that will give you something to talk about. And yeah, like ask for advice, show them that you know you want to grow as a student, excel, and yeah, and you can ask them at the end of the semester or over the summer. Any questions? Okay. Next slide. So now you're in senior summer, which is like where we are right now, if you're applying. So what should you do? Early summer this month, you should be looking at all of the personal statement prompts, like we were saying earlier, brainstorm ideas, try to write your first draft. It could be the first draft for one of your ideas or multiple of your ideas, and first drafts are always bad. So don't try to make it perfect. When you're making it perfect, that's not your first draft anymore. You're like editing kind of. So it could just be like, 15 minutes that you took to like write all your thoughts on a particular topic. So for example, if you have like one meaningful moment from childhood that I want to talk about, or something that made you grow as a person, and then you just write everything that you can remember about it, that's still your first draft, kind of. You can work from there. And then there's also the time to keep track of your deadlines. Look at different scholarship opportunities, look at all the schools that you might be applying to, compile that school list. You can make a huge one and then kind of narrow it down, or have like a few and then increase as you research more schools. And then make a note of the deadlines. If you have a dream school or a reach school, and you know that you really, really want to get into it, that you are going to commit to it if you get in, then consider applying early decision, because that's going to increase your chances. So keep note of those. And then this also when you can start like looking into the different qualities of or values of a school that might align with yours to build that school list. And then visit different college campuses, because visiting in person can tell you a lot about campus environment, and whether you will even feel comfortable if you attend that school. Yeah. Okay. So August is when the common application is open. It's when, things start to get kind of real. And this is when you can kind of get familiar with the platform. It's never too early to get familiar with everything. If you have time, try to fill out like the logistical information, like your name and, like your address and everything. And then this is also the time to start revising or making like more drafts of your personal statement. You should also probably have picked like the topic you want to do. So if you had like multiple drafts for different topics, you should kind of know that which one you're going to be submitting, so that you can hone in on that, edit that to the best of your ability. And at the same time, identify someone who can help you with the process. So if you have a trusted advisor or teacher, a mentor or a family member who can look at your essay and give you feedback, that's always good. I wouldn't recommend getting more than like 2 people to keep looking at it over time, just because like, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of spoil the stew. Yeah, so a lot of people have different ideas. They can give you different perspectives, but if you have too many, then it might kind of take away like your authenticity from your piece, and this is your personal statement. And then also this is the time to finalize that school list. Okay, kind of like a brief overview of restrictive early action, early decision. These all have earlier deadlines. So if it's REA, then you can only apply to one private school, but you can apply to any other public schools. And then early action is you can apply to more than one private school. And then early decision is you can only apply to one school early decision, and it doesn't matter what other schools apply to, because if you get into the school, you have to go to the school. So you need to know for sure that you want to go. Yeah, so these are just some of the examples of the schools that fall under each category. And then senior fall, September, finalize your personal statement. You should continue leadership positions in your extracurriculars, activities. Definitely follow up with your letter of recommendation writers. If you have those early deadlines, it's good to let them know earlier on, so that they're not like kind of rushing to finish up your letter, and because that can impact the quality. And then continue working on your Common App, fill out all the information that's needed, and then start looking at your supplementary for each of your schools. Sabia kind of like touched on like the different types of supplementary essays that you have. So you can always like start preparing early for each type of question, but if you need a prompt for each and you know which schools you're applying to, a lot of these schools might have those similar questions that fall under the big buckets. So you can pick one of their prompts, work on their supplementary, and then adapt it to the other schools that have similar prompts. That makes it a little bit less hard. So you don't have to write like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 essays. And it's more like 10 or 15. But that depends on how many schools you're applying to. And then October, complete the Common App. This means your personal statement should be done. This is when you really need to dedicate your time to supplementary essays because they're just as important as your personal statement. And because these are school specific, schools really want to see the effort you put into those. They can tell, like, if you half-heartedly did some and then submitted to make the deadline, that can show that, you don't value the school as much as like maybe another one of your schools. Yeah, so make sure to have them ready in time for your early deadlines, and then for editing. And this is also the time when FAFSA and TSS opens. So you can, start looking at that if you have time, but you can also do it later, I think. And then also, like, if your recommenders don't tell you that they're ready around like mid-October, like don't like make sure to be on their tail constantly, because at the end of the day, it's like the rest of your life, kind of, not the rest of your life, the next 4 years of your life that's being impacted. And yeah, like don't be afraid of reaching out multiple times, meeting them in person, going to their office, wherever it is. Yeah, and then get ready to submit your early application. So we have a second case study. Natasha's planning to apply early to School X, a prestigious and highly competitive university. During the summer, she spent 1 month volunteering at a soup kitchen and 1 month traveling with her family, and she was not able to work on any component of her college application. When she opens the Common App in September, she realizes that there is a lot of requirements for a completed application. Although she asked her teachers for a letter of recommendation in May, she has not followed up with them since. She has also not written her personal statement. What should Natasha do now to make sure she's ready to apply in time for her early deadlines? You can take a moment to think or talk with someone next to you that might, make you feel a little bit more confident about your answers, and then participate. This is only to help you guys and get that free essay review. And talk amongst yourself. And if you're ready, just raise your hand. Okay. Is anyone ready? Does anyone have any idea?
Yeah, we have an idea here at the Long Island branch from Alexandria. Just speak up a little bit because I can hear you.
So we all kind of said that maybe early deadline might not be for her because she might not be able to like craft a really strong application, so she hasn't like really started her essays yet. And we said like she should start asking teachers for like recommendations in order to like kind of craft a really strong application and make her decisions on.
It was kind of hard to hear.
I got it. I can repeat. So, we think that she should go for regular decision instead of the early ones because maybe she doesn't have enough time to scrape everything together for the early decision. We think she should follow up with her teachers as soon as possible. That might be the easier step since she already contacted them in May. And then after that, like get to the essay, or the personal statement as soon as she can.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexandria. Does anyone else want to share anything? Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. So, quality is always important over kind of like haphazardly putting together your application and submitting it. Regular decision is always an option. But if like, for example, if they really want to apply early, but you know how Alexandria said, they're not sure if they can make it in time, they can still try to prepare. It's not too late to start. So if they are able to prepare in time and you know the quality looks pretty good enough to submit, then they can submit. But if not, then they can just wait until regular. In terms of what she can do, definitely yes, follow up with their letter of recommendation writer. And then she should get on with the personal statement. So kind of make like a timeline for yourself, like a adjusted timeline. So timeline that we proposed might not be what like the point that you're at. So you have to kind of be flexible with yourself. Don't say, oh, it's September and I haven't done all of this, it's too late, I'm screwed. No, you can of course like be flexible with yourself. Just make sure to, I guess, give yourself shorter deadlines instead of like, you know, the longer times that you can take if you start earlier on. So she can definitely do the brainstorming needed for personal statement and then go through multiple rounds of drafts. She just has to do it like faster. And yeah, and then also like start looking at the supplementary. But if it gets too much, she's still starting like early enough to complete the application in time for regular decision. Okay, thank you, Alexandria. And then November, December, January is when you're kind of wrapping up the entire application process. If you're applying regular, you're completing your supplementary essays and then finalizing your application for the January deadlines. And if you applied early, this January is when you kind of find out whether you were accepted or deferred or rejected. But yeah, this is when things start to kind of wrap up and you're submitting and you can finally take a breather, enjoy winter break. And then what comes next? So a lot of this, I don't know if it's a lot, but some of the schools that you apply to will reach out to you for interviews. And because you guys are in New York, actually, no, everything is virtual now. So I keep forgetting. When I was applying, like interviews are still in person. So if there are interviews, you'll most likely, you know, have the opportunity to interview at the different schools. This is when you definitely need to like prepare. We'll get more into that in a case study. And then definitely try to maintain your GPA because there is a transcript that gets sent out in February, March, like before decisions come out, because they want to know, like, you know, you're like, oh, I submit it. And so senioritis, I don't care about classes anymore. And then admissions offers. So this is when you get the offers, you can, you know, there are different like financial aid packages you might get. You might be deferred out of school. So in those cases, definitely like reach out to those schools if you want to go there. But for example, the financial aid package is making it hard for you. Express that and see if you can negotiate. It never hurts to try. And then send letters of continued interest in the places that you're deferred in, either early or regular, to show that, you know, they take you, you will attend their institution. Yeah, okay. And so final case study, we have Natasha again. She was able to actually successfully apply to colleges in time for the deadline. I didn't specify which, so whatever you choose to think, whether early or regular, but she was successful. And she has received an invitation for an interview with School Z to take place in less than a week. School Z is one of her dream/reach schools, and she's very nervous about the interview. What advice would you give Natasha so that her interview goes well? You can take maybe like 30 seconds to think, talk. Jackson Heights, you can participate.
I would say that Natasha should reach out to those who are already in the school and ask for advice. And I also think that she should just be herself and be very authentic and genuine in her interview so that they can see who she truly is, rather than just seeming like ingenuine.
Thank you. Anybody else? There's a lot of things she could do to prepare. Any other branches? Anybody on Zoom? Thank you for participating. Yeah, that is definitely something that they could do. That's a very like creative answer. And I recommend people doing that too, especially if you know students who already attend the schools that you're interviewing at. They will definitely know a lot more about student life and things that you can talk about specifically in your interview that shows that, you know, you're really, really interested in the school, you really looked into it. Also, interviews tend to be like more of a conversation. So have some questions prepared on your end that you can ask. It doesn't have to be too specific, and maybe it's not helpful if it's too specific because you don't really know if your interviewer has like the same interest or background as you. So they might not be able to answer really, really specific questions. But asking about student life, for example, or their experience in courses, or what they value about like faculty-student relationships or the campus environment, just general questions that, you know, that you also want to know about is really good to have. And because it's probably going to be a virtual format, you can kind of have them next to you so that you don't forget if you have questions if you need questions to ask. For example, if they ask you about your favorite book, you can also follow up and ask what their favorite book is, or what are some books that they've read in classes that they've taken in the institution. So it's not just like one way, it could be a lot of back and forth. Make sure to be on time for the interview. That's really important. Dress kind of professionally, whatever, like, you know, your camera is seeing. You can wear your PJs below, but be more professional, like on the camera. Yeah, I think that kind of covers some of it, but you can also always do more to prepare. Mock interviews with other people. Yes. Okay. Summary. Be diligent with deadlines. Follow the timeline during your senior year, and then stay on track with your personal statement. Set milestones for yourself. Doesn't matter when you're starting. And then prepare for college interviews and pay attention to any of the school portals that you're creating for any updates. Okay. Thank you all. We can jump into questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sadia. Before we proceed to the Q&A, I want to thank everyone for making the time to visit this important information on a hot summer day in New York City. If you could please unmute yourselves in Jamaica, Long Island, Ozone Park, and join us for a big round of ovation in 3 seconds for our amazing leaders from, we're gonna have a constitutorial New York City-wide ovation for everyone on 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much, everyone. Louder than Ozone Park in Jamaica. We're not trying to be the quietest location here. Okay, this is becoming less about the presentation, more about our bragging rights of our neighborhoods. So similar to last time, I want to be sure we can introduce some other folks in the room. Ms. Nipa, please come to the front. We do have our Chief Operating Officer here, Ms. Nipa. Ms. Nipa was once upon a time leading this entire department. Her degrees include a bachelor's from Barnard College with a concentration in computer science. Nearly all of her computer science classes was taken at Columbia University on the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences side. Later on, Ms. Nipa completed her master's in public health from Columbia University and has led the high school department, which includes SATs, Regents, and GPA up till now. On behalf of Nipa and myself and the team, we couldn't be more excited to bring such outstanding counselors in Ms. Sadia and Ms. Sabiha to you all. So I'd like to take this time for you all to get your questions ready. We're going to have our question and answer session. Let's see which branches have the first questions. And to all the branch leaders, let's get the questions onto the board. We have about 5 to 10 minutes before we wrap up for today's lecture, a workshop. And please take your phones out. The next one is going to be in 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. personal statements, supplemental essays. There's going to be a big workshop for parents and students on that topic. Food, similar setup, but we're going to have a lot more people because we will have a lot more time for our, getting the word out. So first question, we'll let Ms. Sadia take it away. Thank you, everyone.
Is there a
We
question?
have questions coming in. Yeah, she's a graduate of Barnard College. You want to go there? Just talk to her after class, after workshop. Just talk to her. Is anyone looking to go into public health? Public health. Her public health degree is from Columbia University as well. Harvard, of course, has an excellent public health program, similar to MBA program and a lot of other things. We have a little rivalry between the two schools when it comes to graduate stuff and undergrad stuff. Crimson versus Light Blue. Can you talk about the EOP and HEOP program? What does it consist of? And what are the requirements? Really, really important for first generation kids. Thank you. Take it away to the leaders.
Sabria, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, because I applied EOP and HEOP to a few schools. So this is specific to New York State residents, in which a lot of schools, including like Stony Brook, NYU, even Cornell, if you apply, I believe, to their Cal school, which is their College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. So if you're into biology or any of the environmental studies or agriculture, or also their architecture school, you can apply through these specific programs. And what do they necessarily entail? Oh, yeah, there you go. That's a specific rule. But just to search up the specific definition, the Educational Opportunity Program is for low-income students who are first generation, and the threshold in which you can apply really varies from each school to school. So, for example, Stony Brook and Cornell don't have the same threshold in which they apply to schools. So I believe for Stony Brook, the income is a lot lower. I think it's about like 65K compared to Cornell, which would be about 75K when I applied. So it can change year to year, but if you fall within that financial income, you can apply through these specific programs offered, and you just click a checkbox on the Common App, right? And they will give you more information to apply, like using your financial information that you have to submit. There are no additional, I guess, requirements in terms of admission. Like you don't have to write an extra essay per se, but you just need to submit some more documents. So that's the main difference. And they will let you know after you've applied if you qualify for it. And then if you get accepted, they'll like process through. And basically under these programs, you're more likely to get significantly more aid, especially to schools like NYU. If you apply to here with the specific program, you fall within the applicant pool of being first generation low income. So if that answers your question, yeah. Okay, any other questions, just submit within the chat box.
I think there may have been a question in the audience, Ms. Sabiha, Ms. Sadia. If you don't mind doing a quick 30-second summary of any of the extracurriculars that you believe helps you stand out. I think because we're starting to see the theme, GPA, APs are important. Of course, standardized tests are important, but how do you stand out? It's really through those ECs and your leadership. So I think if we get a 30-second New York Minute summary of what you think helps you stand out, the students will get a little bit more of a blueprint on how they can follow in your footsteps.
Sadia, do you want to start first?
I can start first. I might not have like too much to say because it's been a long time, and like the extracurriculars that come to my mind are all the ones from college, since I'm applying to med schools, and that's what I'm going through right now. But I think one of the things that had the biggest impact on me that I was able to talk about a lot is my role in a kind of a social activism org. So we used to lead a lot of workshops to kind of host discussions about equity, discrimination, racism, like those kind of topics, just to increase dialogue and create like a community within our school, which was pretty small. I went to Queens High School for the Sciences at York, and yeah, kind of like promoting more inclusive and safe space for students. So that's a lot, like that's what I really enjoyed doing. I used to do a lot of volunteering also through Red Cross and things like that. And then I was also the announcer for my school. So I used to do the announcements, which was really fun. I think that's just like a unique thing about like my application. Yeah. I am not sure. I can't remember other things off the top of my head that like I thought was really, really impactful. Oh, I was part of yearbook also. Sorry, this is like a lot of recalling. I was part of yearbook in college also, so that's just something I am really interested in doing. It doesn't have to be like, you know, these things. Whatever you're interested in, you can always also continue and look into those opportunities at the school so you can talk about them also.
Yeah, but I didn't know Sally was also part of yearbook, but I was also part of yearbook. I did like the circulation, and it was an editor for the circulation department, in which like we kind of advertised all the spirit days. But I think for me, the highlight is I kind of knew early on that I was really into science. And my goal, I guess, in high school, in terms of finding a career or path I'm interested in is exploring what field of science I really liked. So within school, I kind of just explored my science courses, but outside, I think like my first 2 years, I took the STEM Research Academy with CUNY, and it's offered at all the CUNYs. So I highly recommend, especially if you're underclassmen, to partake in this, just to see like what field of science you might be interested in. So they have like forensics based ones, more like chemistry based ones, more physics based ones. So I kind of used that to kind of explore, and I later got to like work in the lab with one of my professors. But then later on, I think my biggest thing was I had the amazing opportunity to conduct research at Memorial Sloan Kettering for bladder cancer, and that was one of the best things I think I've ever done. It was such a rewarding experience to kind of work in the hospital and also like do research. So there are a lot of opportunities in labs that you can take advantage of, and that can just be like cold calling professors. But for me, I started off through the HOP program, which is Human Oncology and Pathology, and it's accessible to sophomores and juniors. And especially if you're a New York resident, you get a leg up in the application process. So highly recommend. But that's where I got to know my PI, and then I kind of grew from there. And then a lot of my ECs were just like surrounded by that and also community. So project I led at Stuyvesant High School was the Big Sib program, so in which we help like freshmen. So if you're currently a student at Stuyvesant High School, you probably had Big Sibs. I was the person that led that program, in which we chose Big Sibs and try to initiate like Camp Sty and things like that to help you guys kind of orient to the school environment. So yeah, my biggest things I think were like just doing community-based things and science. Okay, we have another question. Can you talk about EC tiers, like 4C and lower EC values? Can you expand on that and give us examples? Oh, okay. I'm not sure about what the 4C is, but different tiers. I don't think there's necessarily like a tier system of here are all the clubs on the lowest end and like things the highest end. I think it's more so how you show your commitment and initiative and the impact. So you can have a small organization or you can start a small club, but if you are the type of person to take initiative and host meetings, right? Like if you have a book club at school, but you take the initiative to have book drives, reach out to community branches outside of your school, try to get other organizations involved, that small thing is a lot bigger to who you are. So even like for me, I just mentioned like cancer research, it might seem like a really big opportunity, but I don't think it necessarily has the same value as like maybe like the community-based organization I did. So I don't think they're necessarily EC tiers. I think it's whatever you value the most and the amount of effort you put in the most to your ECs and how you portray that. But that's like my opinion. Claudia, if you want to tap into that.
Yeah, so I just like looked up what it means. So when I was applying, like I didn't really know, organizing things in the tiers. I feel like things have changed a lot over the past 4 years. Students are definitely becoming more active in high school. But from what I see, like tier 1 is like some of your extremely rare like activities. So if you're like really, really good at playing violin and you've won like many competitions, that would be like your tier 1 type of activity. And then your tier 4, it kind of goes in a gradient, is like something that you haven't really done a lot, or you have committed like much of your least amount of your time to. So maybe something you only did in 9th grade and you're applying, so that would be like your tier 4 activity. So in terms of value, I mean, I guess definitely like higher tiers are better. So things that you commit a lot of time to, that you've made a lot of impact in. It's a lot of what we've been saying, but kind of, I guess, organized to get it into like categories. But yeah, I hope that's helpful.
The time is exactly 4:29, 4:28. What does the New York City iPhone say? 4:29. We are keeping up with our timing. We were able to get 2 of the lectures done in a set of 25. There's at least 25 lectures like this in our college advising program for rising seniors and rising juniors. Next 2 weeks from now, there's going to be 2 more. It's going to be personal statement part 1 and personal statement part 2. So if you are interested in joining that, please be sure to fill out the links like you did for today's. And in the meantime, I think the students have been taking SAT class all day. So I know that we are tired and exhausted, and it's really hot in New York City. If it's all right, should we call it a meeting now? Yeah, we're tired. So, we want to thank you all again. Come over here to the cameras over here. We want to thank you all again live from Jackson Heights. Miss Sadia, what state are you in right now?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts.
Awesome. And Ms. Sabiha, what state are you in right now?
I'm in New York, out in Long Island.
Out in Long Island. Well, we can't wait for the July 29th, 3 o'clock to 4:30 for personal statements. One last round of applause, please, for our amazing college advisors.